Welcome, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming today to this special seminar. Our esteemed colleague Ann Nyambega is going to present on her master's thesis research, which is entitled Reimagining Evaluation of Resilience Benefits from Biocultural Restoration and Nature-Based Solutions. And Ann, I'll tell you some good stories about working with her. Both she and I took a big leap of faith. I had gotten some funding from NOAA, from the Pacific RISA, and I put a job description out there into the universe, and Anne emailed me and said, hey, I would love to come to Hawaii and work on this project. And it was like a match made in the universe because she had experience in doing climate adaptation in her home country of Kenya, and brought this wisdom with her from those experiences to our academic project. And see, these are some of her backgrounds. She put a slide together. Us in the muddy fields of Alakoko fish pond on Kauai as we did restoration in her home with some of her mom, and she lived very close to Kenya, and she just had this perfect resume for the project. And her objective statement just spoke to me, and we hit it off in our initial Zoom interviews of 12 hours time difference. And then she got on a plane and traveled for like 40 something hours to get to Hawaii, and to start to work with communities here in Hawaii. So it has been a great pleasure in advising Anne, and it's not ending today, which makes me very happy. It's not as bittersweet as these things normally are. But yeah, warm welcome to Anne.
Thank you so much. That introduction took me way back when I was just trying to find myself and explore the world, and miraculously ended up in Hawaii, which was not even in my plan of scope of exploration. But it's been an interesting journey so far. Lots of learning, amazing community that I have built here, friends, family far away from home, and mahalo to Kristen for taking me through this journey. And yeah, so thank you everyone for making time to be here, whether online or in person. I'm really looking forward to an engaging session as we dive into what I've been doing for the past 3 years. And also with that backdrop, I want to acknowledge that I enter into this space as a guest in Hawaii. My research here reflects views from someone who's spent time learning in Hawaii. So still room for improvement and lots of learning, but we'll get there. So the structure of my presentation is divided into four main blocks. We'll start with the introduction, move into the method, and then results and interpretations together, and finally conclusions. And I'm also a bit nervous if my voice sounds like I'm about to cry. I'm not about to cry. So I'll jump in straight to the introduction. To ground us in why this work matters, especially for Hawaii, I'd like to acknowledge that we are living in climate change. It's no longer a far threat, but it's real. We're experiencing it in our communities, and there's an urgent need to adapt and reduce climate-related risks. And that's kind of the big picture of why I do this work. My question as a person approaching this work is, how can I contribute to resilience in my local community for both ecosystems and people? So that brings us to biocultural restorations. These are exciting reciprocal efforts that reconnect place with people, reviving cultural identity and practices alongside ecosystem recovery. So in Hawaii, this is especially vital because these restorations provide multiple benefits to people and to ecosystems. They help respond to climate risks like sea level rise, flooding, and at the same time reviving cultural practices that restore the Aina and the people of who occupy the Aina. So on this screen, I have some examples of biocultural restorations happening. We can see here we have people building fish pond walls, another group removing mangroves, which are invasive species in Hawaii. We have agroforestry, working in the Lo'i, and into the Moana, we have coral reef restoration. So when we zoom out at a global scale, biocultural restorations are embedded within what this umbrella term, or what we call nature-based solutions, under this rounded circle here. And nature-based solutions are defined as actions that protect, manage, and restore ecosystems to address societal challenges like climate change. So while this global framing is just really catching up with what has been happening over the years, it's opening doors for new conversations and have ways to think about these solutions. So for example, we have cost benefits analysis coming in, we have evaluation and effectiveness of metrics, we have investments frameworks that help elevate the value of community-led restoration in decision-making. So what makes NBS so compelling? I'll switch between NBS and nature-based solutions towards its presentation, but NBS is just a short film. So what makes it so compelling is the ability to provide multiple benefits at once. So think about it this way. For example, restoring wetland improves habitat for native species, buffers against flooding, enhances carbon storage, while providing food to the community if you add Lo'i to it, right? So similarly, integrating green elements in cities can help with urban cooling, improve air quality, and support community well-being. And beyond this environmental and social gains, research has also shown that nature-based solutions are cost-effective in the long run compared to traditional green infrastructure of just purely engineered infrastructure. So with all this growing recognition of the benefits of nature-based solution, we are seeing a real shift in policy, both globally and nationally. So at the international level, we have the IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature, which has developed standards and frameworks to help countries design and verify nature-based solutions that truly deliver resilience benefits for people and nature. At national level for us, we had this amazing roadmap that the Biden-Harris government put out. I know it's looking very weird right now, but the main aim of it was to support accelerating of nature-based solutions. So with this recognition comes a lot of funding. There's a growing policy-driven investment in nature-based solutions with organizations, again, like IUCN, the Nature Conservancy, the government, state departments channeling resources towards projects that work in this space. So here in Hawaii, that conversation is also taking root. So the state released this working paper in 2021 that connects local action, like restoring fish ponds, managing wetlands, to larger global climate goals. And other initiatives that embody this work are, for example, the 30 by 30 Watershed Initiative by DLNR, Department of Land and Natural Resources, that aims to protect at least 30% of our native forests, which are green infrastructure that capture rainfall, reduce flooding, and other sedimentation. I mean, the list can go on. And then second, we have Holomua, which is also sort of a similar model, but for the ocean. So expanding effective and community-based management approaches to nearshore environments to support coral reefs, fish stocks, and strengthen coastal protection. And then most recently, we have the Hawaii Green Fee, which is a funding mechanism to support climate initiatives, and hoping that some of that money will go back to community doing this amazing work. So as we've seen, nature-based solutions offer a host of benefits and are gaining recognition as support. But here's the challenge. Funders and policymakers often want site-specific evidence. They want to get justification on why they should give you money to do this work, right? And on the other side, we have biocultural restorations that are very place-specific, and every implementation is unique. So evidence bridges that gap between funders and local credibility to produce or deliver resilience benefits here. And that ultimately secures long-term support for biocultural restoration. So in short, what I'm trying to say is, with all this theoretical knowledge and understanding that nature-based solutions deliver resilience benefits, there's still a need to provide real evidence on how it does so. So how do we generate valuable evidence? So let's take a step back and think about this cartoon here. Researchers and evaluators often look at the same landscape, biocultural restorations, but from a slightly different point of view. So researchers here help us understand how the systems work, right? They uncover relationships, mechanisms, explore patterns, build rigorous evidence of and generalizable knowledge of the kind of understanding that guides restoration science, if I put this right. And then evaluators, on the other hand, focus on how well these actions work in practice. So for people, places, and systems that are meant to benefit, they ask, are these solutions actually providing the intended benefits? Are they meaningful in context? Are they helping communities and funders achieve their main goals? So in reality, their perspectives are deeply connected, but evaluation builds on what the researcher or the research provides, bringing it closer to decision-making priorities for communities and funders. So with that said, I'll jump right straight into my objectives. So my main goal here was to co-develop a culturally grounded evaluation approach with a community restoring Alakoko fish pond to help track and understand resilience outcomes. So generate evidence of how local area restoration is leading to resilience outcomes. And to do that, I used two main tools, program theory and participatory mapping, systems mapping to reveal key feedbacks, relationships, and points that shape resilience in socio-ecological systems. So these are where NBS operating. And the next objective was to co-identify and translate community-defined indicators of success evidence into a form that can also communicate to people who are not from Hawaii, but want to fund this work. So to tie all that together, this was my conceptual framework. It's a hybrid conceptual model that builds three existing foundational approaches to evaluation, each representing an essential lens for evaluating the system. So at the top part, we have program theory, which explains why and how a program is expected to work within its context. So it basically visualizes the pathway from actions or interventions to impacts that we feel or experience. So second aspect was participatory systems mapping, just reiterating what I'd said previously. It draws on systems thinking and network analysis. So it's all about making visual those pathways that we can be able to see and explain how point A leads to point B. And thirdly, I ground my evaluation in Hawaiian relational values. So I use this Aloha framework, which was developed by Queen Liliuokalani Trust evaluation team that grounds the research in Hawaiian relational values and serves as a moral and relational compass for this project and shaping the engagement that I have with the community. So the methodology, the fun part. A bit of a background to my case study. So before Western contact in 1778, there are more than 400 local or Hawaiian fish ponds across the islands, ranging from different sizes from half an acre to almost 500 acres. And what I found really unique about these systems is the traditional engineering that went into putting this fish pond systems together. So local were constructed with the guidance of Hawaiian ali'i, the chiefs, and served as sophisticated food production systems that sustain the communities through cultivation of fish, maintaining important wetland habitats for native birds and other aquatic species, but most importantly, maintaining a balance between people and ecosystems. So over time, however, these fish ponds were damaged or lost due to a number of reasons. There was coastal erosion, we had lava flows, invasive plant species, sedimentation, and runoff, all linked to either the plantation era, urbanization, and also ranching. So in the recent years, there has been efforts to revive or restore local across the islands. And these efforts are not only about rebuilding the infrastructure, but also reconnecting the people to what actually fed them or feeds them over the years. I just want to mention these photos here. This is Hui Malama Lokoia gathering that happened at Alakoko in 2023, and this is some of the fish that live in the fish ponds. Yeah, and this is a photo of Alakoko in the early 1900s. So if you look at these images here, like I said, that's Alakoko in the early 1900s. There's a River Huleia, which borders Alakoko, and then the fish pond. And then around the fish pond, we have this complex Loikalo systems that also supplement agricultural production, if I'm saying it right. And this is Alakoko in 2012 before restoration began. So 1900s, and then this is 2012. You can see the dramatic difference that had happened because of all these threats that I talked about, most especially mangroves. And this is a group of paddlers or canoers moving through River Huleia, and you can see the forest, how high the mangroves are. So since 2015, Malama Huleia has been spearheading restoration of Alakoko fish pond, leading community-driven efforts to bring this place back to life. So their work focuses on three main areas. First is invasive species management, so mostly removing mangroves from the fish pond and the adjacent River Huleia. Second is to restore the native wetland ecosystems by planting native seedlings and also culturally significant crops. And third is to reconnecting people to the Aina and indigenous food systems through planting loi, which is taro patches, and cultivating culturally significant food crops, like I said. So this image kind of shows how or where the restorations are happening. And this is the amazing Malama Huleia team that's done all this work since its inception. So while we have this amazing work happening, we still have these ongoing threats. We have sedimentation as a result of flooding and then we have mangroves, which also build land on fish ponds. And then we have climate impacts, warming ocean temperatures or warming water temperatures, flooding, droughts that all impact how these systems operate. And the tilapia looks so cute by its it's amazing. So now let's move into the evaluation, how I connected the restoration to biocultural actions, biocultural actions to resilience outcomes. So our first step was to develop the system map, which is what I will run through in the next couple of slides. And I just want to mention this, that what grounded or how I grounded myself in this work throughout, especially being a guest in Hawaii, is participating in work days that happen at Alakoko. So I joined community in helping with restoration, pulling mangroves, planting native species and all that stuff. And most importantly was listening. So through this experience, I began to understand why fish ponds are actually valuable in Hawaii, not as ecological systems, but as living cultural spaces that shape our relationships with each other and with the Aina. So during these work days, we had several talk story sessions. You can see Peleke here is a native fish pond practitioner who was walking us through like why are they doing this work, what's going on behind the scenes and all that stuff. This is us at spring there, and that's me pulling mangroves. So this was just to ground myself in what's going on and understand why am I even doing this work? Why is this valuable, right? And then after that, so that happened before and throughout the research. So once I felt like I have a solid understanding of what's going on, I moved into the mapping process. So this happened through 3 different workshops. So our first workshop was in December 2023, where I brought together key Malama Hulia staff. We had Peleke, Sarah, the executive director, and other members of the restoration team, and began building shared picture and understanding of the system. So the goal of the initial story here was understand what activities or interventions that are happening on the ground, what outcomes do they see, and what challenges have they encountered along the way throughout this period that they've been working. So I gathered the conversation using program theory prompts, the questions I just said, and as the group reflected on their experiences, I had a facilitator who helped me to live map the system. So this was, as I speak, someone was putting all the pieces together on Kumu. It's a software that's used for system mapping, just to visualize how these activities are ending up as outcomes in the community. So here I had map version 1 as the output for that meeting. And then the second workshop, or before we went to the second workshop, we took time to reflect and understand also what did I get from that meeting and what's missing. So that is what informed the second workshop. So during this second workshop, the main aim was to sort of close the gaps that came up from the first version. And I just want to highlight one important thing that happened during this period. So in April 2024, there was an island-wide flooding. And my hope here was my plan initially was to attend and do this in person, but it was not possible due to the flooding event. They had to cancel our work day. So with that in mind, we began reflecting on how climate change is going to affect our activities at the system, at our restoration activities at the system. And it became a turning point to think about climate change as an active threat to ongoing biocultural restorations and even volunteer engagement. So again, with that, we had version 2. And then in August 2024, we worked on version 2, and I presented the version 2. I worked on version 2 to produce version 3, and then we presented version 3 to 20 community volunteers during our work day. So the aim of this work was to talk the community through the system, just a presentation, and ask them about what parts felt true, what didn't, what felt missing, what connections are still ambiguous, like need more refining. And I just want to mention that I also obtained consent from community members in order to do that work through our IRB protocol. And then These are some of the pictures from our validation exercise with community. This is the initial system map. We have sticky notes of what the community felt and thought about the system map. So after the third workshop, I continued to improve the system map, making multiple iterations, making it simple for clarity and coherence. And I focused on mostly the overall flow of pathways linking actions to resilience outcomes. And once the map had reached a point where it reflected the story of the system story, I embarked on a really interesting journey of network analysis, which I'm going to be discussing in the next couple of slides. So this feels like a mouthful, but it was a really interesting exercise to surface those relationships and to see them visually on Kumu. So the first result is the Alakoko system map. So this is what it looks like currently. And I want to acknowledge that it's a living map. So it changes depending on how the system changes. For that time that I was working with community, this is what a reflection of what's happening. Over the days, I know most things have changed from the interventions happening. So yeah, I just want to say it functions as a baseline, but it's ever changing. And then we have the yellow is social ecological outcomes, the orange are the cultural outcomes, the green is ecological outcomes. So it was interesting seeing how these pieces speak to each other and work together. So from this larger system, I was able to extract smaller subsystems, which I call logic models. So in detail, it speaks to how a specific restoration produces specific social and ecological and cultural outcomes. So this is for mangrove removal here. So you can follow the chain of how that activity produces, let's say, a thriving community. The second step, system analysis. So system analysis also happened in Kumu, and it helps to identify the most influential parts of the systems, the nodes that hold everything together or bring the biggest ripple effects in terms of resilience across the system. So to do this, Kumu uses something called the 90th percentile, which means the top 10% of the nodes that have the biggest influence in the system are the ones that drive the system. So think about it this way. You have 20 nodes, and every node has, like, for example, one does not have any pathway coming in or any connection. This is what I mean by connection. So we have from 0 to 10. So the 90th percentile here will be 90% of 2018, which falls right at 6. So any node with a more than 6 is driving the system. So this is happening from the least to the most, right? I hope I'm making sense there. So the first measure in this was in degree. In simple terms, in degree measures connections coming into a particular element of the system. So you can think of it as showing which parts of the system receive the most influence or are most dependent on by others. So our highest in degree was productivity of Alakoko with a value of 6. And this is what I mean by in degrees coming in. So productivity here reflects how well a system can maintain its functions, producing food, supporting biodiversity and sustaining cultural practices even under stress. So when productivity is strong, it reinforces community confidence to continue doing this work, to participate, and it creates a positive feedback loop that strengthens adaptive capacity of people and place. And again, sedimentation is just a threat to productivity. So the next one was out degree, which measures how many connections flow out of as an element. So with high out degree, we are looking for what we call drivers or the spreaders in the system. So they spark change by influencing many other parts of the system, like rippling outwards. and volunteer engagement at the highest degree. So what this means is volunteer engagement is what keeps on this energy happening in the, or energy flowing in the system through knowledge, through action in restoration. So when volunteers show up, they don't just pull mangroves or rebuild walls, but they also create deep connections to people, with people, to the land, and overall maintain these practices that have been proved or have worked over time, like key load in monitoring and understanding how these systems behave. The third one and the last one is between centrality. It's a way to measure which points in a network acts like bridges, or think about it as brokers. I love to use this example. Like in your family, who do you go to when you want to communicate something, like, or pass a message easily, right? So that's what it's doing, and Kumi is using that formula behind the scenes. So from that, community engagement was the connector or broker. So engagement enhances the system's ability to recover from disturbances through supporting decision-making. We have volunteer engagement. We also have it building deeper connection and just motivating people to keep on doing this work, or improving adaptive capacity in this sense. So finally, a theme that kept on emerging from the participants, although it did come up during the analysis, was the hydrological connectivity. So here, hydrological connectivity, I mean healthy flows or connection in the system. This is our water system, and therefore a brackish water ecosystem linking the springs or the freshwater sources and the saltwater sources with a balance is really key to have productivity and to maintain the resilience of this space. It's also very fragile. Sea level rise, flooding, drought can affect the system. So that's how climate change comes in through that angle. Lastly, I know this is a lot, but I just want to mention they harvested indicators directly from the systems map and field notes from when we were having these talk stories and conversations about ways they see change manifesting in the system itself. So for each indicator, so this is how they describe change. So I paired it with sort of a Western science, how they will describe that indicator, and then how community measures that indicators or knows that this change is happening, and also attached it to or paired it to Western methods of tracking in case they have expertise and funding to support the Western ways of tracking. So the aim of this was to validate indigenous ways of knowing that are locally meaningful, but at the same time speak to funders and scientists who are trying to understand this. So like any other research, this work has limitations. So the first one is it's very place-based and grounded in Alakoko's scope. So while we approach this work, I mean, the methodology is flexible, but the outcomes and the pathways are attached to specifically to Alakoko. And second, it's resource intensive, not only financially, but time-wise. It takes patience and a lot of time to build the system as well. Thirdly, the system is ever changing. So this might not be the real representation of the system in 2 years or 5 years down the line. And lastly, the methods can be technical, especially the system mapping that happened on Kumu and doing all those connections. So yeah, if you don't have a bit of a background in systems mapping, that can be challenging. And in closing, I just want to go back to this image and say that we can get evidence, but in order to do that, evaluation needs to be grounded in place, culture, and relationships. And it can move beyond proving outcomes. Evaluation can move beyond proving outcomes to illuminating how resilience is lived, renewed, and sustained in communities. So recommendations and next steps. My first recommendation here is to support community groups who are trying to put the pieces together and communicate evidence of their work. So support can mean funding, technical evaluation guidance on how to do this. And looking ahead, I'm hoping to continue this work with a focus on how biocultural restorations reduce flood risks and, in short, co-develop tools that help tracking and generating evidence for community groups that are working to address flooding. Oh, another thing is to publish, and lastly, to stretch my evaluation curiosity a bit further. I hope to join the PhD program maybe next semester. And I want to say mahalo to everyone and who has supported this work. Most importantly, Pacific Risa, who gave me funds to do this work, Peleke and Sarah, who have been very patient with me, and my lab group, my community members. We had some researchers who joined me along the way, and they gave me hope and, yeah, tried to help me to understand what I'm actually doing. So, and most importantly, the volunteers as well at the community group, and to everyone who supported this work. If you're not in the slide, this was a last minute slide, and I was trying to find everyone's picture, and yeah, but so thank you so much, and I'm really grateful for your support. Yeah, and I just want to share that Malama Huleye is having a huge workday event happening on Saturday. They're going to be doing the last stretch of the wall rebuilding. So if you can make time to join on Saturday, that will be great in supporting restoration on the island.
7 a.m.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that. I'm not a morning person. 7 a.m. is indeed early, but thank you so much, guys, for joining in and listening in.
Okay, we will throw it open to questions from the audience.